With that, I will give the floor to Lavina, who will give us a talk on ethics. Lavina, are you ready to go?
Yeah, it says that you need to enable me to share my screen, please.
I just
In the meantime, I think there's one more person that needs a bit of introduction, which is Bud.
hello.
I had to bring along. Yeah, making it a little bit more tangible. I think Bud is my new sidekick.
Also,
Okay, great. So here we go. Can you guys see that?
yes.
Perfect. So I think, today I kind of wanted to start off with, some basics. So let's take a few steps back and unpack what is ethics and why exactly does it actually matter, right? So ethics, we understand as being something that is very much a moral driver for the things that we do. It's almost like an engager or a radar screen to tell us what we're doing and where we're going with it. So knowing that, how do we then apply it to AI? AI is as comprehensive as this diagram shows, with so many different aspects and so many different areas, with so many different new things sort of piling on. And why do we need it? That's another fundamental question. We need it to drive better humanity. We need it to drive more structure within ourselves so that we can better then manage the AI. Okay, we need it because we need to understand where we're going with it and what exactly can we do with it. Okay, and what are our drivers for ethics, right? And AI, this combined view. And I believe that it lies with the leadership, with governance, as well as internal practices. Now, internal practices, when I speak about that, it's not merely just internal practices of organizations. It pretty much also goes very much into yourself, into who you are, right? I mean, what does your future look like as an media has had good and bad experiences. So has yours been bad or has it been relatively good? And where do you want to see it? And how much of power do you wish to install or give to other people with your information? So are we going to be then the effects of micro-targeted advertising? Are you comfortable with that? Are you comfortable with working with bots, and to what extent? How much of generalized data are you willing to allow a company to actually then gather of you, right? And very much these things are topics that we don't necessarily have amongst our families, amongst our friends. And it's something that I think we need to really unpack because, the impact of AI within our society, we've already seen the effects of it, right? In terms of movies. Uh, I mean, that's tenfold huge, right? We've seen an explosion of new things that's come through of late. That's so much integrated into lives, more probably not within Africa, but in terms of the rest of the world. So that means it is going to hit us at some point, and we need to be somewhat aware of the things that we're doing. I mean, for example, Alexa, um, I think they're working on a payment system where you just say, Alexa, pay, I don't know, my cell phone account, and she will or it will automatically go and pay it for you on your behalf. So there's no more logging on to bank accounts. There's no more logging on into, your identity almost is shared with things like this. Of more recent times, I think because of COVID, we've seen things like self-checkouts, contactless shopping, which has been quite interesting. And especially within the Africa space, I think, we've seen a lot of growth with it, especially here within South Africa. I think in the last probably month of me going around, I've managed to see at least, 5 different stores, 5 different companies and organizations that have implemented some force of self-checkouts. But what does that mean, again, ethically for us? when we walk into a store, what are we then actually driving? What do we actually want to walk out with? And, how much of power are we willing to share and give away? So I think, the first point of understanding AI and unpacking it a little bit is probably around singularity. And when would that actual point come? And singularity is very much when a lot of the components can be connected to each other, right? And us having a wider visual perspective of or a one view perspective of what's being driven. I don't know if any of you have seen one of these really cool movies. It's called Futurescape. It's a series done by James Wood, and it pretty much unpacks a lot of the real life scenarios. And there are a few other sort of series around as well. So if anyone's interested in that, the one in particular that I found interesting was in season 1, episode 2, where he portrays a robot actually walking up into a voting line to actually vote for an election. And on the flip side of it, you have all of the humans protesting, to the point of saying, if you have no soul, you have no right. So it again is a good indicator for us as humanity as to decide where we actually want to be. I think the next step of AI would be in terms of it gaining some sense of consciousness, right? In terms of feeling some sense of emotions, in terms of feeling some sense of closeness to what we as humans would feel, right? But where exactly are we with that? I mean, I have a bit of a psychology background, and I also understand that from a psychological perspective, we haven't yet mapped out the entirety of our human brain and of our full potential. And I think that's an evolutionary sort of effect that's going to come with time. And I think the last bit is the super intelligence, or almost the godlike, right? Where this is the point where everybody fears, which is where AI would take over, or AI would create themselves in a godlike manner, right? And I guess this again boils down to, what rights do we give them? Are they entitled to rights? What decision powers can they actually have to influence humanity or disinfluence humanity? And I think these are very interesting conversations that are imperative, that we need to start getting the conversations flowing in terms of where we're taking all of this. And I think some of the use cases that we're going to unpack in the sessions, but I'll just briefly run through them, is Meet Now. Neo. Neo is pretty much a robot that can walk, that can tell stories, and that has the ability to make decisions, right? And this is all because in the aim of medical, okay? So in the medical sector, it came about because they better wanted to understand decision-making processes in the healthcare sector, right? Then we have the law sector. The law sector is another interesting one, and I think we've seen a bit more sort of engagement on this front, where we have things like Ross, we have IBM Debater, and we have another one called Lex Machine. So there's been a lot of different varied examples in terms of the law space, and I think this has been one of particular interest because it's a lot to do with judgment, a lot to do with rights, rights for humans as well as rights for the AIs. And another one is obviously the autonomous vehicles, which I think is what sparked a lot of the conversations around AI initially, in terms of, who do you let survive and who don't you? And should those scenarios even exist in the first place? If they do exist, what are then the fail-safe mechanisms that we can actually then utilize? And I think the last one is around political ethics. Political ethics, I think, is going to be another very interesting space in terms of, are we then as humanity just creating another generation of things for us to oppress because we have been known to do that? from a behavioral perspective. And these are things that I think bring a lot to surface, again, our own self-reflection and who we in essence are. Technology has made it a way to actually bring about a lot of questions, but in the same time, it has fast-tracked us as humanity to actually understand ourselves better. So I think, in summary, there's obviously a few things that we need to take care of. And one is around data protection and privacy. The other is definitely in terms of how our environments will be impacted. We create things, to what degree are we creating it? To what extent? What is the impact in terms of the larger picture? In terms of fair AI, where are we with this? Are we being inclusive, or are we being very diverse in terms of ourselves, in terms of our businesses, in terms of algorithms, in terms of the data that we use? I think one of the other favorite ones of mine is actually the transparency and the explainable in terms of, not just toolkits, but how can it actually be applied to our day-to-day lives, right? And accountability is another. I think accountability, again, is very much of debate. So does accountability lie with us as individuals? Does it lie within organizations that lie with people that actually, or organizations that use it, or does it lie with the AI itself? So very, very interesting questions coming up based on how AI being war and and those are another set of scenarios that we can unpack as well. And the foundations in terms of your privacy, trust, security, and sustainability. How does it then translate to you? Hi. I think I got kicked out a little bit. Yeah, sorry guys.
No problem.
Let's just get to the end of that one. And so we were here. In terms of the data and AI, how do we actually unpack that? And this again talks a lot to the ethics of the AI, the diversity, the inclusiveness, the fairness and the trustworthiness of AI. And then again, we can further do this per industry. So, in the retail industry, what does it actually mean? We're talking about augmented reality. We're talking about customer engagement, knowing your actual behavior patterns. In the public sector, we are asking for more access to public AI, right? In terms of what can we do to better serve ourselves as citizens, as governance, right? In the automotive industry, again, very much, how do we weight out the risks in that sector? Do we go off and make it completely automated? Do we lose jobs? And then what do we do with that? What do we do with people that need access to things like that? Then another interesting sector, I think, is the telco sector, the utilities and energy, because this very much speaks to, again, uplifting of the humanity. And last is around the financial and insurance services sector. And this talks again to inclusion, a lot about inclusion and diversity and access to funds. So let me say thank you very much and stop sharing that. So I hope I wasn't too much over time.
No, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Lavina. That was incredible. Thanks for sharing all of that. Yes.
Awesome.
Yes, yes. No, I think that's a great preview for breakout rooms, because one of them will actually be on AI ethics, where people will dive deeper into these and discuss, ask questions among themselves, and potentially even complete out this survey we've put together for people to discuss AI use cases. But now that we even still have you on the call, it'd be great if people could ask questions. I would kind of nominate the first person who's asking questions because she joined later and wasn't able to introduce herself. So Lolade, if you can introduce yourself, it's pretty much name, where you're from, the organization you represent, and why you're interested in being here, and then possibly a question for Lavina.
Thank you, Alex. Hi, Lavina. Thank you, everybody, for this, for this amazing conversation. Yeah, I guess so. I'm the founder of Nora Labs. My organization is Nora Labs. You can check us out at noralabs.org. Our mission is to inspire and operationalize Black liberation worldwide through art, technology, and community building. We do that through Nora Press, our media platform, and Nora Fest, our virtual film festival. And we're very passionate about using AI to really nurture powerful and authentic, intimate relationships between folks across the Black diaspora. We believe that revolution, you already see the revolution is happening. If you're following what's happening in Nigeria, in the Congo, in Namibia, then you already know that that revolution is happening now, clearly with everything that's happening, in the States as well. So we're very excited about using AI to help us to become more integrated, more connected, and just more powerful. How do we liberate ourselves from within using data, using technology that helps to accelerate our progress and our movement forward. So I'm really curious to hear, strategies that we can employ and how we can collaborate with those of you here to really accelerate the work that we're doing.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I think, again, a very interesting question. It's really exciting to hear the kind of things that's actually happening within Africa. So kudos to you guys. Yeah, so I think for me, fundamentally, it boils down to, what kind of frameworks do you have within your organization? What kind of questions are you guys asking yourselves? And at which point through the process do you guys ask yourself these questions? So, in terms of, let's take an example, creating a product, right? When you want to create a product, where are you starting with it? At which point do you start asking yourselves these ethical questions, right? Is it at the point of product ideation, or is it throughout that entire cycle, right? And if it's through the entire cycle of it, at which points then would you do that? And it's very much, I believe, an all-inclusive approach. So, rather than an exclusive one. So, it's not let's create a product and then it's got to be a combination of a lot of different varied factors. It's almost more for me a mindset. So the business itself needs to have a mindset of driving the diversity within its organization. And that can be filtered from an HR perspective in terms of creating of policies, or it could actually then implement, as close to creating products or even algorithms. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, other folks, anyone else have questions?
Hi, Alex. It's Nick here. I've got an observation, or I've got some information to share with the group.
Mm-hmm.
We did a survey with some of the buyers in our community. So that really means enterprise companies. So these are obviously the companies which are deploying AI-driven machine learning, deep learning type solutions. And we asked them, are you developing an ethics and privacy policy in respect of your development? And we got some interesting results, which I just wanted to share. So reassuringly, 58% said yes, they were. So I thought that was pretty good. Another 23% said they have one in place and it's an integral part of the solution. 15% said no, it's not relevant to our particular deployment. And the remaining 4% said no, we don't feel we need one. So I thought it was quite an interesting set of feedback, just purely from a real world, people out there deploying solutions, deploying technologies around ethics policies. And then we asked them the question, where do you seek help in drafting your ethics and privacy policy, do you do it in-house or do you do it externally? Do you get people in to help you? And we found that 49% drafted their own ethics policy, and 30% of people used an external company to help them do that. And 21% said it's not applicable for what they actually do. So I just thought there's some interesting stats to show from the real world of ethics and what large companies are telling us about what they're doing with this particular topic.
If I can, I love that bit of information because it gives insight into, are companies themselves creating their own ethical guidelines? Is that ethical enough? Is there some form of a wider framework that we need to then abide by? Or, is there then independence or validity in getting external auditors to actually audit your AI? And these are, I think, some of the key kind of conversations that's happening on a global level. We've seen quite a few, frameworks and suggestive, frameworks coming about and methodologies around it. But it's very much, again, how do we feel about it as Africa? More so, how do we feel about it as South Africa? Because, again, it's like a lot of people saying, yes, we are vetted. Yes, we are compliant. But are you actually, is it inculcated in your culture within your organization? Is it actually being driven to the full extent? So, I love the fact that people are aware of it. And I love the fact that they are actually doing it. So, it just leads to more kind of conversations into what extent.
Yeah, I think there was an interesting follow-on point which we asked the people. I mean, all these responses are mainly from African-based organizations. Do you require more information and education on these technologies and how they can positively impact your business? And reassuringly, 62% of people said yes. So I think if you're gunning to be an ethics consultant or a consultant looking at compliance, maturity frameworks, and there are some maturity frameworks emerging now in this space, it's a good time to register a domain and start getting to business, because I think a lot of companies out there are seeking help. And if you look at things like COBIT and ITIL and CCMI, some of the traditional frameworks in the ICT and systems world, yeah, I think AI is now getting to the point where these frameworks need to be adhered to, and consultants can help these companies do it, because they actually do need help, is what our survey concluded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly correct. If I can add to that, I mean, when this is the early phase of the technology, or the phase of awareness, most people don't know much about first the benefits of the technology, and then definitely the side effects. And so it's the phase of like trying to inform people on that. In fact, when we sent out our own survey a couple of days ago, we fully expected that most people who would see that survey wouldn't know a lot about what many of the use cases are, but that's the whole point, is to start discussing and talking about them. And so in one of our breakout rooms today, it'll be about that, where people would live try to speak on the different use cases and how ethical or not they think they are. And one of the questions I'm expecting is that they'll be asking, what does that even mean? So looking forward to that. Essa, you're the commander here. How are we doing? And we still have time for one more question, or you would want us to go to the rooms?